Okay, Yong here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, this question actually came from my daughter, Vera. That day I was talking to her, and then she asked me a question. She said, in this universe, because I told her about, how do I say, life after death, and there are 6 realms and all. So she said, okay, so that means in totality in this universe, there should be a fixed number of entity that is transgressing between one life to the next. So I couldn't answer her on that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that was her question, whether is there a fixed number of things
yes.
transversing between different realms?
Yes. She
Okay.
started off with the human realm, and then she said that, if there is a fixed number of people, then it should be the number of people on this universe should, on Earth should be the same. But then I said that there are other realms, so there could be like animal and all the other realms. So I explained to her in that way, but I don't think she's convinced.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. There are two ways to. There are two ways that questions can be answered. I mean, there are many ways. But when the question is asked, one way we can do is try to explain it. Meaning that we have a way, we come up with a way to explain it. Another way is to just describe it. So explaining it means using kind of first principles, yeah, and then you explain it, yeah. So the other way is if you can see directly, then you can just say, no, it's like that. Unfortunately, for most of us, we haven't reached that ability yet. So we can only rely on certain principles and then explain accordingly. Yeah. The trouble sometimes with explaining by principle, right, is that people will wonder whether that principle is sound because they may not agree with the principle to begin with. Yeah. Then how about the other approach? You just say, well, this is how it is. People may still not be convinced because they cannot see it. So sometimes for certain questions, it boils down to faith. Yeah. If let's say you can understand the principle, then you don't need faith because you can understand the principle or you agree with the principle. Like for example, scientists tell us that there are many stars out there. Yeah. Well, we can see that there are many stars. Yeah. But scientists tell us that what we can see through the visible eye is just a very small amount. And I don't mean to say that we look at it in Singapore, because Singapore has light pollution, right? So even the night sky, you think you can see the stars, but actually there are more stars that can be seen, except that because of the light that is surrounding us, yeah. So our pupil dilate and becomes much smaller. So we cannot see all the stars out there. So scientists tell us that there are many galaxies. Yeah, you just go and search Google or YouTube. How many galaxies are there out there? Trillions and trillions of stars, trillions and trillions of galaxies, nebulas, clusters. So then the question is, how do you make sure that that's true? In the first place, like now imagine if you tell your daughter, right, there are galaxies out there, then she may be like, yeah, I know that. But I mean, people say they know that, they actually don't know. They just heard that it's true. And they agree with it because scientists, ma. Yeah. So we have faith in science because it works. Yeah. We have faith in science because at least there are certain parts that is apparent to us. Yeah. For example, now it's because of science that we can talk to each other without cultivation. As long as you have a working handphone or computer, we can talk to each other, and you have a working internet connection, right? Because of all this, we don't need to be convinced of everything else. A subset of science is apparent to us, so from there we develop faith. In addition to that, most of us have been schooled in the field of science since young. Yeah, ignoring preschool, but actually now preschool also learn some science, I think. But just looking at primary 6, Sec 4, that's 10 years. 10 years of learning of the fundamentals of science. And for the most part in primary school, you're not taught about why. You're just taught that science, that it is like that. Primary school, do we do experiments? We don't do experiments, but so that's basically just accepting, right? 6 years of that, and in that formative age, it's very hard to wipe that out. Yeah, then on top of that, in secondary school, where we start to develop contemplative or inquiring way of thinking, then science further enhance our confidence in it by having experimentation, where you can sort of do some simple experiment and see the expected outcome or behavior. But still, this is not really hard science, Yeah, it is more to do for verification of some known fundamentals, which 2,000 years ago was like point of debate. But today is a foregone conclusion, right? So because of all that, and you don't need to be taking science at a higher level than secondary school, because up to that point, you would have developed certain basis already, right? So whereas now, if we look at Buddhism, most people don't even spend much time learning at a young age, right? So the worldview construct is vastly different. Yeah. So for anyone to then hear of the so-called Buddhist answer, or to gather an answer based on what the Buddha has said, is a bit tricky, because at first place, they don't have that so-called confidence or faith in what the Buddha has said. Yeah. So so-called, in a way, empirical questions like of the world, or questions about the world at large, that is not readily verifiable, is not always the best place to start when it comes to learning Buddhism. It's like, imagine if we were to not have students learn science at all from in primary school, not in secondary school. Yeah, so they have no idea about science, no concept of science, never heard about galaxies, all those things, and never heard of even the idea of scientists. And then now in the 20s, suddenly tell them, come, let me tell you about science. Science, and there are people who learn, who investigate about science, and then they tell us that, and then someone have this question about, well, how come there are more human beings? And then present a scientific answer. Such a person without that background in science would be like, why is it like that? You know, yeah. And while this may seem strange in Singapore, you look at US, we have flat Earth society, people who think that Earth is flat because the scientific basis there is very extreme. There are those who is very deep into science, and there are those who is like, while they attend school, their science teacher can tell them, well, this is just a theory. Don't take it too seriously. Actually, there's some other way of thinking. Yeah. So the advantage of now is that we can really see very vast different backgrounds throughout the world, and even in a country like US. Yeah. So, but that doesn't answer the question. I'm just giving you the background of why a person wouldn't take the answer as an answer. So then what is the answer? In Buddhism, there are innumerable world systems. Yeah. So by principle of that, is it possible for beings to actually be reborn in different world systems? It's technically possible. In principle, it's possible, right? Notice that many times, not just today, in different classes, I would sometimes say in principle. Sometimes I would just say it as it is. So where it's in principle, it means that it is beyond my direct observation. So I have to cite principles to substantiate it. Yeah. So in principle, it's possible, yes, for beings to go from one system to another. That's one. That can account for seemingly beings increasing without any source for it. Another way is what you have explained to her, where there are actually a lot of different realms, right? In Buddhism, we say there are 6 realms, but actually 6 is a big subset. Yeah, the big categorization. Within each of the realm, there are a lot of subsets now. So if beings were to just be limited to Earth itself, that itself would still account for the differences. Merely because there are so much insects that we don't see in the visible eyes. Yeah, just ants in one house itself, you just go and count. Yeah, and then you don't even want to start thinking about the number of ants underground. Yeah, and ants is just ants. And for the most part, we just look at house ants. House ants, there are different species of ants. Yeah, so just by virtue of that, it can easily account for any of that. But still, that is just by principle. Yeah, because unless you have the ability to see beings taking rebirth, yeah, then you can really do a static map, then time slice, and then you observe, okay, I have observed this world system for the past 1 kalpa, and within this 1 kalpa, there was a net increase of how many percent, and this was due to transmigration from how many world systems, how far away, yeah, but eradicating that net gain, beings have moved around, and then there was how many percentage, then you know what that reminds us of? Census. Census, which I kind of mentioned yesterday, right? You know, the last census, we dropped by 10%. Yeah, about 10%. The previous one, not the recent one. Yeah, the previous one, we dropped from 43 to 33%. Yeah, but do you all know that the actual number of Buddhists actually increased? Yeah, the actual number increased, but our percentage dropped. Yeah. So although looking at percentage is important, it's important to look at the different angles from it. Because these 2 numbers tell us a difference, a very interesting story. It means that we are not growing as fast as the overall population. Yeah. So in terms of the actual number, we actually increased. Yeah, just that our increase didn't catch up with the growth of the Singapore population. That's why there's a percentage drop. Yeah, this time around we only dropped by 2%. Yeah, but we have to then look at the census data to look at what is the overall population increase. Yeah, to see whether it can be accounted for in this way or that way. Yeah, so we understand demographics, we understand population, things like that, human job. Yeah, this has anthropology, human job, all those things, right? But that's because we have border control. Right? We have border control. So using that, we can account for, why was there an increase? So the increase was due to this, due to that. How many people die? How many people was born? That's usually the case, right? Then on top of that, then plus migration. So the net should be the same. Yeah. The trouble for looking at like globally, we first of all, we don't know how many beings there are in totality to begin with. So that question itself poses a methodical, systematic challenge. Yeah, because the big to know whether to know why there is such an increase, and to see whether it can be accounted for rebirth from other realms, you must first be able to know how many sentient beings there are in our world system. And let's just consider our world system to be just Earth, Yeah. By right, in the teaching, it probably is not as simple as just Earth is the world system. Yeah. So just simplifying it, don't consider other world system. We need to be able to calculate or determine how many sentient beings there are on Earth. So how to do that? Let's just take a step back. Think about it. Census for 2020 is only released now in June 2021. And when we say census, we are just doing a sample, sample of the whole population. Yeah, and using statistical model, the sample size must be a certain amount, then the standard deviation will be reduced to a certain amount, things like that. We learned that in secondary school and JC. Yeah. But that is, and even that with modern computers and everything, it takes an extra 6 months. Just Singapore, 5.8 million people. Yeah, and we didn't account for insects in Singapore. Yeah. So her question itself is difficult to answer at best. Yeah. But perhaps it's more important to find out also what is her curiosity. Because behind this question, there's some fundamentals that she's questioning. Like I don't know what is her exact question behind that question. But oftentimes when people ask this question, it is that they look at the different explanation from different religion to account for how we exist. And then they look at real life, population increasing. Yeah. And from what they can observe, don't seem to have any other things. There wasn't any announcement. 500 million human beings were seen dropping from the sky. Yeah, there were multiple asteroid landing last week, and then from the asteroid came 500 million human beings, and then they are now split among all the different countries. So there was an increase in overall population on Earth. Yeah. So based on what they can see, then they have questions. But the fact that she has such a question means that she's thinking about whether Buddhism makes sense, which is not a bad thing.
Yes, that is very true. So I think it's a good start. So I try to explain to her about the need for faith at the start. And then it's not blind faith, but it's to really investigate for ourselves and experience for ourselves. Yeah, so was good. I had like a 2-hour discussion, then I couldn't answer, I think, most of the questions. So I said, yeah, maybe I should arrange her to meet Shifu. Then Shifu can answer her queries.
Yeah. We can have a chit chat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shifu.
Luna asks, what causes rebirth in Asura Realm? From what we can see from the suttas, it's described that if a person is prone to anger and jealousy, yeah, so basically defilements, but in particular anger and jealousy, then results in rebirth in the Asura Realm. Yeah, Luna, I don't know whether your screen froze or you managed to keep very still. I think your screen has frozen, so I don't know whether that answers your. Is that sufficient for your question? Luna.
Yeah.
How come they have psychic power? Okay, so Luna's question about Asura. So the other thing about Asura is something that is interesting. So if you look at the Pali Canon, right, Asuras are mentioned, but in the Pali Canon, and in fact, even in the Chinese Mahayana Sutra, the Buddha categorized the world in different ways when talking to different people, or sometimes to focus on certain areas, certain points, then he would categorize or split them in different ways. So one common way that today we hear of is the 6 realms, in which then we have the heavenly beings, the human realms, and then Asura. Then we have the ghost realm, the animal realm, and the hell beings, right? The 6 realms. But if you look at the earlier texts, you'll find that 6 realms don't appear as often, if at all. Yeah. In particular, if you look at the Pali Canon, actually, I don't recall the term 6 realms at all. It's usually the 5 destination. Yeah. In the Chinese translation, is 五趣. In fact, in most of the Chinese sutra, you oftentimes see the term 五趣. 五, 5, then 趣. 趣 有趣的趣, 去向, I think it's 去向的去. So it's more like the 5 inclination, the 5 destination. Oh. So under the categorization of the 5 destination, then you actually don't see Asura. But at the same time, in the Pali Canon and in various sutra where it's only mentioned 5, you also see mention of Asura. And so the reason is because Asura, right, is a very interesting category where it is there are sutras in, I think, if I don't recall wrongly, in the Digha Nikaya, there are stories about, and also I think Samyutta Nikaya, stories about the Devas, yeah, in the sensual desire realm, fighting with the Asuras. So the Asuras is classified under 2 categories. One is the Devas. The other one is under animal realm. Yeah, at the topmost of the animal realm. And the basis is that their rebirth is actually rather meritorious also. And then they reside in this nice place. And one of the feature of Asuras is that their male, the male Asura, right, is very wrathful. I think some texts describe that as very ugly. Yeah, very fierce looking and so on. But the female is very beautiful. Even more beautiful than the Deva nymphs, the Devata. Yeah. So what happened? The sensual desire realm heavenly beings 看中那个阿修罗女。Yeah, and then basically go and occupy their land, chase them out, and then grab their woman. So in various sutra, talk about them having this long-term fighting. Very interesting. But because by virtue that the devas have even more merit, so they win. No? Yeah. So Asuras is very interesting. And so because they are actually sort of deva also, that's why they also have psychic power. And that's why in some of the English translation, instead of Asura, they use demigods. Yeah, they're like half god. Because they actually have the merits of the heavenly beings, but they don't have, in a way, the virtue, because the Asuras get angry easily. Not unlike the heavenly beings, they are more mellowed. I remember there was one sutra where the Asura king actually went to the heavenly realm and then go and occupy the seat. Yeah. And then the lesser heavenly beings were all terrified, and then they got upset, and then they tried to fight him. But no matter how they fight him, somehow that day his superpower, wow, can defeat. Then I think, was it Saka? I think it's Saka. And he arrived. He greeted the Asura king. Instead of fighting him, he said, "Ah, great Asura king, welcome, welcome." Then his kakya, his minions, the smaller, the lesser heavenly beings were like, "Shaka, Asura king sitting on your throne, huh? You still welcome him?" No, they say, no, well, let's welcome him, Yeah, but yeah, how can we treat our guests in this way? Offer him some food, offer him some drinks, and treat him very nicely. And then I think at some point, the Asaka king actually explained to them that because this Asura king, he thrived on the anger of that, that exists. So the more angry they are, the more powerful he becomes. So when they come down and treat him nicely, his power wins, and then he was able to win. Quite interesting sutta. Yeah. So whether it's Asura or heavenly beings, they have the psychic power simply due to their rebirth merit, not because of their cultivation while they are a deva, while they are a Asura. No, it's because of past life merit. But the psychic power of the sensual desire realm heavenly beings is far limited, yeah, compared to that of the devas in the form world. Yeah, it's even more powerful. Yeah, but the form world heavenly beings care less about sensual desire realm. Not interested in sensual desire realm. Yeah. Oh. You want to be Asura? No. There are some masters, there are some teachers, masters, who say that while there's the 6 realms, within human realms is very interesting, because within human realms, you can see the traits of all the different realms. You can see beings who are in a hellish state, suffering a lot. You can see beings who are in the heavenly state, enjoying like unimaginable pleasure. Yeah. You can see beings who are always dissatisfied. Yeah, like the hungry ghost. You can see beings who are easily agitated. Yeah, constantly jealous of others. So the beings you can see in humans where if a person is discontented with what they have, and then jealous of others, even though objectively their current state is actually quite okay, but they are they are not happy. They're not happy. I ever had this. I think I mentioned these few stories many times. One of them. One of them. Oh wait, eh? Oh no, different student. One of them very cute. Had what was the score? 1B, 8A1. Yeah. O level. Yeah, 8A1, 1B. But not happy. Why? Because her good friend, managed to go to Hwa Chong. She cannot go Hwa Chong, can only go to NJ. Only go to NJ. And I'm like, huh? What's the problem? Yeah, but she's not putting on an act, just throwing tantrum. No. She really looked visibly distraught. Yeah. And then another one, working in a bank. This conversation happened a few years ago. The other one many years back. So this second one, she said, the review is coming. So in the company, the review is like 1 to 4 or something, 1 being the highest. So she expect to get to know 2 or 3. So I said, so what's the problem? Then she said, well, she don't mind getting 2 or 3. But as long as her colleague don't get the same or higher. I'm like, okay, so let me understand what you said. If you get a 2, your colleague must not get a 1. If you get a 3, your colleague must not get a 2. Yeah, at most same as you, but even same, she's not so happy already. Much less if it's higher. So I said, imagine if you got a 2 and you haven't know about your colleague's result. And if you never know about your colleague results, you should be happy, right? 2 is actually quite high already. 1 is the highest. Then she said, yeah, but I will want to know. Why do you want to go and know? But she said, no, I want to know. I said, why? What difference does it make? And then she said, because she feels that her colleague didn't work as hard. So I told her, that's the problem with human beings. We only see ourselves working. We never see other people working. Yeah. You know, when we suffer, we can see our suffering. When people suffer, we cannot see other people suffering. So we always feel that we are not working the hardest. You know, it's hard for us to see what people have gone through to deserve that 2 or 3. Yeah. So as a result, this student, the second student, yeah, not so happy also. Yeah, but eventually the results came out. Well, you know, yeah. Yeah, so we also see human beings behaving like Asuras, even though not born in the Asura Realm. Yeah, but so we go by the teachings, right? If you there are 2 parts to each of the realm. One is the qualities that lead to those realms. The other one is the traits of those in this realm. Okay, yeah. So to be reborn in as a human or heavenly realm, then you must observe the precepts. Yeah, that means you must act in a way that is not harmful to others. In the teachings, it also highlights wrong views, not having wrong views. Oh, but I realize the way we take rebirth is actually very complicated. Most of the models we hear of actually is simplified already. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, you do this, then immediately, because of this one karma, next life confirm like that. Except for what we call the 5 heinous deeds, 无逆奸罪, 杀父杀母杀罗汉触佛身血破和合身, killing of one's father, mother, killing of an arahant, harming of a Buddha, breaking up of a community that is in harmony. Doing this, not all 5, any of the 5 is karma that is so heavy and so strong and so determined, yeah, so firm that your next life is assured, very assured. So most people don't know about where they're going to go, but those beings who did any of this, next life very confirmed. I don't know next life going where. Why you don't know? I know. So such a person, next life very confirmed. Whereas for most of us, we do some good, some bad, some in between, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But depending on whichever one we connect stronger, we get reborn. But what about the other karma that we have done? They remain dormant. Yeah, they become dormant. They are dormant until conditions are right. Yeah. So it's far more complex than how we usually imagine. Usually in the sutra or in teachings, we say you do this, you get this result. That result may not be the immediate next life, but eventually when conditions are right, you get that result. Oh. Yeah, so you see people behaving in a way that is kind, humane, and so on. Then depending on how good, how intense of that wholesomeness, then either human or heavenly realm. And then if you were to train yourself in a certain particular way, where you are disinterested in the five courts of sensual pleasure, yeah, that means carnal pleasure. You become disinterested in that, and you manage to then bring your mind internally to be absorbed, yeah, to develop samadhi up to jhana, then inclining your mind in this way all the way to the end of your life, then you take rebirth accordingly. So in Buddhism, it's not a wheel of fortune. Okay, now Tana, what? Now your end of life come, spin the wheel. Spin lah, I don't know time lah. Behind a lot of people die already lah. Spin lah, spin. Now COVID-19, quick spin. Hell. Go to hell. No, it's not a wheel of fortune. Yeah. So it depends on how you live your life. Yeah. The stronger inclination that compels you in that direction. You don't have to believe or don't believe. You just look at your present life. Yeah. Every day, what is your inclination? Ask yourself. And based on your inclination, doesn't that determine your state? Yeah. Your mode of thinking, the preoccupation in your mind. Yeah. That conditions determines your subsequent states. And until you change, you continue to go in that direction. Yeah. And so if a person habituates themselves to keep on comparing what they have with others, and then from there result in dissatisfaction, then without being reborn in Asura Realm, if they were to honestly examine themselves, they will see that, I'm responsible for my own future. Future next few days is determined by me. Future next few minutes, next few hours is all determined by how I want to maintain or manage my state of mind. Yeah. And that's why the Buddha's teaching emphasized so much on being aware of our body, speech, and mind. Yeah. And then checking whether there's wholesome or unwholesome states. Yeah. And then putting in effort to reduce and remove unwholesome states, nurture new wholesome states, strengthen and grow the wholesome states. Yeah, that's the only thing you can do. So if you want psychic power, in case if any of you want, you train yourself in that way. First thing is you must stop watching YouTube, Netflix, all those things. You continue watching that, confirm no chance of having psychic power. Because your mind is preoccupied with the eyes and the ears. Yeah. So let's habituate ourselves with love, compassion, and wisdom. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。Till we meet again. may be guarded and protected by the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. As always.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sifu.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a stupendous Sunday ahead.
Thank you,
Happy
Sifu.
Father's Day to everybody.
Oh, today is Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to everyone too.
Bye.